Camden Yards, I would say alive this week, but certainly not very well. Luke Jones joins us now after yet another loss to the Cleveland Indians. The Tampa Rays come to town today for a couple of days. And Luke, you know, when it's the pitching, it's the hitting. When it's the hitting, it's the pitching. Now Beckham's hurt. I mean, you know, I don't know how things could get much worse than they've gotten it this far.
About the only thing, and I joked to another reporter as we were heading to the clubhouse after the 2-1 loss on Monday night, I said, short of Manny Machado just spontaneously combusting or something like that, I don't know if it could get much worse. I mean, it is... Kevin Gausman was really good. He pitched a heck of a game, and I think the sad thing about this series specifically, summing up what happened against Cleveland, is they got two really good starts from Bundy and Gausman. And look, Tillman and Cashner weren't great by any stretch of the imagination, but they both gave them 6 innings, and they both kept them in the game. And you have that kind of a pitching performance over 4 games, and you come away with 1 win. It really speaks to how horrendous this offense has been. And as the Orioles wake up on Tuesday, they're averaging fewer runs per game than any other team in baseball, 3.17 runs per game. You're not going to win games like that short of having unbelievable pitching. And, yeah, they've had their pitching hiccups. There's no question about that. But, I mean, you look at this, and they've been getting plenty of pitching performances that have been good enough if their offense was even just average.
By the way, Gausman may never do that again. You know, 8 innings, 4 hits, 7 strikeouts, 100 pitches. That's about as good as you're. I mean, how could he be better?
Before, though.
But how can he be better?
You know, I mean, it was a really good outing. Don't get me wrong, but we need to. And I'm not saying you. I hear a lot of people say this. Kevin Gausman's had stretches of time. Even last year, look at what he did in the second half of the season. I mean, it was a really good outing, don't get me wrong, but it's not something completely outside the realm of possibility with him. I mean, he's...
Well, even Jimenez did this once a year or twice a year, right? So you give him the ball 30 times, they're going to make it 8 innings at some point. I don't think he's going to go 8 innings more than 3 times this year.
Okay, well, you can say that about...
Well, it's his best effort of the year. I don't know how he could be better.
Well, I mean, I'm just, I don't think it's something that was such an anomaly for Kevin Gausman. He's pitching well. I mean, he was really bad his first start, and he's been 3 straight quality starts since then. He hasn't been a major issue. I mean, I think you're still looking for more consistency from him, but we're seeing a much better version of Kevin Gausman than we saw in the first half of last season. I mean, that's pretty clear. So. I mean, it's disappointing because you got a really good start. He made 1 mistake to Yonder Alonso, and he paid for it for a 2-run homer in the second inning. And, if that's the only mistake you make and you retire 21 of the last 23 hitters you face and you have an immaculate inning where you strike out 3 batters on 9 pitches, I mean, that's pretty special. I mean, that's doing some really good things for your club, and you can't manage more than 1 run. And what was really amazing, and I had to point this out because it just really speaks to where this team is offensively right now, but from the point in the 3rd inning when Carlos Carrasco, who was good, I mean, they faced a good pitcher, but at some point you get so tired of tipping your cap because it's just so ridiculous how inept your offense is. But he intentionally walks Manny Machado with a runner in scoring position in the 3rd inning. And then Carrasco proceeded to use a total of 22 pitches on the next 8 hitters until Machado came up again. 22 pitches, which is 1 more than Brandon Belt saw in his at-bat on Sunday that set a major league record. So it speaks to they're not getting the job done. And when you're talking about 22 pitches over the course of 8 hitters, what exactly is the plan? What exactly is the approach? What exactly are you trying to accomplish when you get up there? Or are you just swinging at any old pitch that resembles a strike? And even if a pitch is a strike, it doesn't mean it's a good pitch to swing at, especially early in the count. It really just speaks to how completely lost they are at the plate right now. And the 2-1 loss really reflects that, and a team that's 11 games under 500 now.
He is Luke Jones. He is Baltimore Luke out on Twitter and Luke at WNST.net. All of our WNST coverage brought to you by our dear friends at Pizza John's down in Essex. My mom's favorite pizza, my wife's favorite pizza, even Luke's favorite pizza, but he likes meat sauce on his. He's down at Back River Neck Road in Essex. Get the meatball sub. I'm still awaiting the ravioli. I will be getting down there this weekend between Caps games now that at least got some good news out of that. Also brought to you by our friends at Fremont Mortgage. Don't make a 30-year mistake by choosing the wrong lender. You need the right lender. You need Fremont Mortgage, whether you're buying, selling, refinancing, or just sniffing things out and want to learn. Fremont's education online is there at Fremont.com. Also, King Discount Liquors, lottery, beer, booze, and the best prices in Baltimore, and some of the finest low-budget commercials in the industry that I may be participating in next month. It'll certainly be more interesting than the Orioles games. Get out to Pulaski Highway and give the King a ring, as I did last week. I need this Malbec and all this stout to get me through the Orioles' early part of the season. By the way, you mentioned Gausman breaking some bats and throwing the ball well, and I'll hear all of that. Boy, the Indians aren't hitting the ball well for a team that I think of as being, a team that's going to skate the 90 or 95 wins because of their pitching. But, their offense hasn't been much. That was a game they could have sacrificed on Monday night. And, they got lucky to win a game when, quite frankly, the Orioles' bats are shut down. But the Indians need to hit the ball better if they're going to be productive.
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, as I pointed out to you as we were kind of summing up the weekend, I think it was very striking to me to see the Orioles go up against the Indians. Cleveland's offense hasn't been quite as bad as the Orioles, but it's been pretty close. I mean, they've really struggled to score runs. And the difference is they're allowing about half the number of runs that the Orioles are. And, the Orioles pitching, they've had some stretches where they've done a pretty nice job, but they've also had stretches where they've really been woeful. And it really speaks to when you have an offense that has been as horrendous as this Orioles offense has been. Like I said, averaging fewer runs per game than anyone in baseball as they wake up Tuesday. It really does speak to needing elite pitching, not just solid pitching, which the Orioles have gotten at times, but you need elite pitching to try to survive that, and Cleveland's been able to get that. I mean, Carrasco was really good. Kluber's a two-time Cy Young Award winner. He's going to be good. Mike Clevenger was really good on Saturday. And Trevor Bauer, in a losing effort, was pretty good on Friday night. I mean, it's just they pitch exceptionally well, and then you get to Andrew Miller and Cody Allen at the end of the game, and the Orioles saw that firsthand. If you don't have a lead going into the eighth inning, even with Carrasco's pitch count being what it was, 2-1 game, Terry Francona goes to Andrew Miller, you're in major trouble. So
both those guys have ERAs of 0. We're getting up on the end of April. That's, that unto itself, that's something, right?
Right. And you say, okay, well, facing the Orioles helped them this weekend, but they were pitching really well before that. So, they're going to hit. Francisco Lindor is not going to hit around 220 all year. I assume Kipnis is going to come out of it. We know Jose Ramirez is a heck of a player. Edwin Encarnacion's hitting, down in the mid to low 100s. They're going to hit better than they are, in the same way that some of the Orioles' known commodities are going to hit better than they are right now.
You sure about that?
Some of them. Well, and again, the bar is so low right now. Some of these guys are going to hit better. I think Chris Davis will hit better than 160. He might not hit 200, but you get my point. It has to get a little bit better, but that doesn't mean it's going to get good enough for the Orioles. Cleveland, I think you have a lot of guys in that lineup who, even if Edwin Encarnacion's getting to the point where maybe you ask if he's washed up, you still have enough young guys in that lineup that have established enough of a track record where you think they're going to hit the ball, and they're certainly going to pitch well enough where I don't think anyone in that division, save for maybe Minnesota, gives them trouble in the AL Central over the course of 162.
Don't believe a word they tell you on Masson or those clowns over at 105.7. The Orioles are in last place. It is not fifth place. They are 6-17. I will continue to call it last place as long as they're in last place, since they they muffle their voices to call it fifth place at this point. I don't know if they're going to climb out of last place here, but certainly they have an opportunity over the next couple of days to do hand-to-hand combat with the only other team they're going to be competing competing with much of the year, and that's going to be the Rays at the end of all of this. And, I don't know what to make of the Rays. Every time they come in, I used to think they had really good pitching because I'd see guys like Cobb and Archer and Odorizzi in front of us. That's changed a little bit, although we will see Archer on Wednesday night.
Yeah, it really is a completely different Rays club. Even you look at the lineup, some of the guys that they traded off in the offseason. Kevin Kiermaier's out long-term with an injury now. That's one of the few names that you would recognize from the recent past. But, it's a Rays team that's in transition. They've been experimenting with a four-man rotation and doing bullpen games and different stuff like that, which I admire, thinking outside the box. But at the same time, you look at how they've torn things down. And what's interesting about the Rays going into the season, everyone was so down on them and talking about them tanking and things of that nature. But the sabermetric world was actually a little bit more optimistic on them than some other teams, just because some of the names they brought in compared to names that they got rid of, and they were looking at it from a Moneyball standpoint and said, well, some of these replacements aren't quite as bad, but as you know, they still have to go out and play the games, even if something doesn't look quite as bad on paper, and it's been pretty bad on paper for the Rays, almost as bad as the Orioles. So, we'll see how the next few days play out. The Orioles, with Cobb going tonight, you want to start seeing something from him. I think you look at the pattern where Jake Arrieta has now thrown some good games for the Phillies, and you say, okay, Cobb came in about 10 days after that, so you realize he was behind Arrieta relative to this entire notion of coming in so late at the end of spring training. But he's had two lousy starts. You need to start seeing something at this point, because for me, if you don't start seeing something now, then I'm starting to ask questions, not so much about this being a bad signing or that it's a Baldo part two. I'm more so asking questions, is this guy right physically more than anything if he's not going to start being a little bit more competitive? He doesn't need to go 7 innings and give up 1 run tonight, although the way this offense is going, that might be the only chance he has to win. But
I'd say
you want to start seeing some progress from him. There's no question about that. The last 2 starts, and he said it. He's been accountable about it, and he said that he needs to be a lot better, and it's frustrating to come in and you want to try to give your team a shot in the arm, and instead you're completely out of the game by the 3rd inning. So you want to see progress from him. If you start seeing some progress from him, the crazy thing is about this team, and I would say maybe more so depressing than crazy, is if he starts getting on a little bit of a roll here, this guy has a track record. The Orioles didn't just sign someone who had 1 good half season and overpay for him. This guy's done it for a long time. If he can get himself situated and rolling here in 2018, the sad thing is the Orioles have the makings of a pretty solid first 4 spots in the starting rotation. Then when you talk about Bundy, Cashner for the most part I'd say has been more good than bad. Same with Gausman now coming off this outing. If you can get Cobb going, then you have a rotation that looks better than it's looked in a long time.
I don't know how it rounds out at 6-17, right? You'd like them to go out and give the team a chance to win. Well, they did that on Monday night, right?
Yeah,
then it comes around to Chris Davis is making $25 million.
Sure.
Hit the ball.
Sure. Well, you look at the number of games where they've scored 3 or fewer runs. There have been a lot of performances where they've given up 3 or 4 runs, and it hasn't been perfect. Believe me, I'm not trying to give the pitching a pass, because especially if you look in the bullpen, other than Richard Blyer, and O'Day's been more good than bad for the most part, but he's had a couple hiccups even. The bullpen hasn't been good, but the starting rotation, it's had some periods of time here where they've given them some competitive outings. You look at this 4-game series against Cleveland where they lost 3 out of 4. Until Brad Brock kind of blew up in the 9th inning on Sunday, all 4 pitching performances had been at least respectable, at least in that territory where you say you should have a really good chance to win. You give up 3 or 4 runs, that should be enough to really keep your team in the game and have a really good chance just about every night, and that just hasn't been the case. The Orioles, 10 games at Camden Yards right now so far this year. 5 of those games they've scored no more than 1 run. and they've scored 3 or fewer in 9 of those 10 games. So much for home cooking, which was something the Orioles even last year could count on.
Well, they'll have that for the next couple of days. I mean, I know it feels like we're in the middle of this mess and in the middle of the road homestand, but they're home for another week. So they have plenty of chances here against two pedestrian teams to sort of win a couple of games. Again, we're at the can they win a couple of games, not are they going to be relevant in June or July, because we're so far away from that and so many things would have to happen that, quite frankly, your eyes and my eyes, haven't watched baseball as long as we have, we've watched this, and I don't see a lot of hope here. I really don't. Now, the hope would be they should get better pitching. They're paid enough to get better pitching, and they threw Cashner and Cobb about the $30 million the last month of the season to get better pitching, right? So you would think they'll get better pitching 2 out of 5 days, but I don't know about the bats. I don't know about when Scope comes back and Beckham and the defense and kicking the ball around and who's playing the outfield and who's going to catch and who's going to hit the ball. I think they're going to give Davis 480 at bats. I don't think they're going to pull him out. They're going to keep sending him out there, and if he's going to continue to hit 165, then fine.
Yeah, but I'll go back. I mean, going into the season, did you think they were going to be the worst offense in baseball? And that's what I keep coming back to. At some point, they're going to hit better. Does it mean it's going to be good enough? No. Do I think it's going to be good enough? Probably not.
Dude, I don't know if Anthony Santander, Danny Valencia, Luis Sardinas, Caleb Joseph are really going to hit better. I know Pedro Alvarez isn't going to hit better than he did the first couple of weeks. So, I look down the whole bottom of that and say, I don't know if any of those guys are going to hit 220 in the end. That 220 would be major upgrade over 150, but I don't know that any of them are going to hit 250.
Sure,
I don't think any of them are going to be much. They're going to be closer to Mendoza than they are to mediocre.
Well, and that's fair. And look, I'm not saying that it's going to be. When I say better, that doesn't mean good. I just mean at some point in time, when you're talking about the fact that they had 11 hitters step to the plate on Monday night, and 7 of them finished the night at 200 or lower. I mean, that's just absurd. And look, I'm not talking about Sardinas.
Well, they also made 9 outs on 22 pitches or something crazy, right? It was outrageous what they did at the end of the game.
Well,
right?
and that's what drives you nuts. I mean, it's one thing to talk about not getting the job done, or at one point in time, Santander, in that second inning, they had a scoring threat. He smokes one right back up the box, but Carrasco, stabs it. I mean, it would have been a hit. I mean, it's one thing to point to a couple things like that happening and say, okay, well, or you're having good at bats and you're just not getting the results. But when you see what happened on Monday night, and we've seen this far too frequently, you're seeing these pitch counts where the starting pitcher's getting into the 7th and 8th inning with ease. I mean, it's not even a question. I mean, look at what happened on Monday night. I mean, Carrasco could have easily gone the distance, but it was a 2-1 game, and you have Andrew Miller and Cody Allen fresh and poised and ready to go in the back end of that bullpen. Of course you're going to turn it over to them at the first sign of trouble. But that really just speaks to how the Orioles offense is not just getting results, not just failing to get results, but really looking like they don't have a clue up there as far as what they're even trying to accomplish. I mean, the only one who's going up there and consistently having good at-bats is Machado, and before that, Mancini, before he got hurt. Now, good news is he pinch hit on Monday night. Looks like he's going to be ready to go, but as you pointed out, it looks like Tim Beckham's going to be sidelined here, whether it's DL or even just for a few days, and I know Beckham's not hitting, and a lot of people say, well, maybe that's addition by subtraction. Problem is they have no infield depth whatsoever. We've seen how they've had to try to endure without Jonathan Scope now for the last 8 to 9
Ryan
days.
Flaherty available, Len Cicada. I mean,
it's just absurd. I mean, you're talking about guys like Vielma and Sardinas, and we might see Ruben Tejada back at some point here. I mean, it's just what's next? I mean, like I said, short of Manny Machado just exploding into thin air or something like that, I don't think it can get any worse as far as where this team is right now. And the sad thing is, it's starting to remind me a lot of the dark ages where you're kind of looking at individuals for any enjoyment. When Dylan Bundy pitches, it was great to see Gausman pitch the way he did on
when Machado hits, you think maybe we can get an extra prospect out of him if he continues to hit 300.
Yeah, you're seeing that. Chance Sisco had the only RBI of the night for the Orioles. He did strike out 3 times, and he's going to have plenty of growing pains, but he's one of the few guys right now that you watch in that lineup that you're at all intrigued with, because he's a guy who you feel like has a chance to develop into a starting, everyday caliber catcher. And beyond that, I mean, there's just not a whole lot you point to right now to be optimistic about, other than a few select individuals.
Well, at least we have the NFL draft. At least the Capitals are going to play another week before they succumb to the Pittsburgh Penguins. That's the legend. I had to throw that in there. And the Wizards are playing, but the Orioles are home. They're home all week against Tampa Rays. The Detroit Tigers come into town this weekend. Luke will be monitoring all things at Oriole Park at Camden Yards, the good, the bad, and there's been a lot of ugly, quite frankly. All of it brought to you by our friends at Brooks Huff Tire and Auto. Luke's Garage up in Shrewsbury can be your automotive helper anywhere along the I-83 corridor from York, Pennsylvania, down York Road, Hunt Valley, to Monium, Towson, and Brooks Huff. Anything under the hood of your car featuring those Goodyear products and the best service anywhere. Also brought to you by our friends at Planet Fitness. They bring you our morning newspaper each and every morning at 7 a.m. It's all brought to you by them. Go to planetfitness.com or just check out the Planet Fitness in your neighborhood. I know there's one in your neighborhood because there's one in every neighborhood. They bring our morning newspaper to you at 7:30 each and every morning. You want to sign up online to get that. It'll also have the Maryland Jockey Club entries for Laurel this week. It'll be Pimlico in a couple of weeks. 2 more weeks of running of the ponies down in Laurel. We'll be at the Kentucky Derby celebration, not at the Kentucky Derby Churchill Downs, but the one at Laurel next Saturday. My wife and I are headed down for that. I know folks are getting ready for the Preakness and for the Black Eyed Susan and the Pink Festival. That is May 18th and 19th. All the entries at the front of WNST.net as well as in our morning newspaper. Nasty at WNST.net reaches me. Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Snapchat, Instagram, streaming live on our Facebook as well as our YouTube WNS-TV channel. We are WNST.net, AM 1570, and WNST Towson, Baltimore. And even when the Orioles are 6-17, we never stop talking Baltimore sports.